Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. My name is Evan McCauley, president of the club, and we are thrilled to have you joining us today. This meeting broadcast is available on HCTV as well as our Rotary of Hudson YouTube channel. Our club meets weekly at Laurel Lake for breakfast on Wednesday mornings from 7:15 to 8:30 a.m. Come out and join us for a meeting. We'd love to have you as a guest. To learn more about Rotary, our club, and the impact that we are having on the local community and world, please visit rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the meeting today and be the inspiration.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Jim Young.
Good morning, Rotarians. Good morning. Welcome to our club this beautiful fall day. We bow our heads. Dear Father, accept our thanks for this day and all its blessings. We ask that you direct our club, its leaders, and our actions. We ask that each of us feel our responsibility to Rotary. Bless our fellowship today and bless this food to our nourishment and your service. Amen.
Thank you, Jim. And now to lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Jim Lang. We're focusing on Jims today.
Good morning, Rotarians. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good job. Now the four-way test are the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Jim. And now to lead us in song, Chris Barker. Yeah, Jim Barker.
Chris Jim Barker. Good morning, Rotarians and guests. If you would please. Zapatowski, the 15-year member. Or was it Dan?
It was Dan.
Oh, Dan.
It was Dan, yeah. Bad boy.
Well, if everyone would please join me in singing God Bless America. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Chris. And now to introduce our guests.
All right, we have some guests with us. I won't introduce the speakers since they'll have their time up here, but if our guests would please stand when I call their names so we can give them a warm Rotary welcome. We have Pam Schulerman, a guest of Tom Tobin. And then we have Phil Leiter from the Clock Tower Rotary, and his wife Rebecca is speaking today. Good morning. Thank you. And then we have Bill McClure. He's a guest of Bob Cramp, his second time coming, future member, I'm thinking. And then we have Lee Pearsall, a guest of Ralph Day. Thank you, Lee. It's great to see you again. And we, Bill Libby is joined by his wife, Marie Libby. Thank you for joining us again. And then we have Chris Foster, who spoke a few weeks ago. Thank you very much. And then we have my neighbor and friend, Jennifer May. Thank you for joining us. And Kate Schlotteman, who spoke a few weeks ago from the Clock Tower Rotary. And I think I saw one other Clock Tower Rotarian come in. Jake Jackson, thank you so much for joining us. Well, everyone? Jim Knopf, I'm so sorry I missed you. Well, thank you for joining us and enjoy today's meeting.
And now our president, Tom Tobin.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. So many guests this morning. It's so great to see everybody. I got to, hats off again to our speaker / program committee for putting together the October political forum series. I think it's not only great for our community. Obviously, it attracts a lot of attention to our club and to the political process, and we love exposing so many new people to Rotary Club, what I consider to be the civic networking center of Hudson. All right, let's see. We have a lot of things to do this morning, so I'm going to be quick. Quick shout out to Marilyn, who I don't think is here. I want to thank her. Oh, she is. I'm sorry, Marilyn. There you are. You're not in your usual seat. Okay, thank you for subbing for me last week. Thank you. That was very nice. I do have one quick question, because I received a whole bunch of thank you notes from students at McDowell School for notebooks that we gave them. Ed, I'll tell you what, I'll pass these around next week. Maybe you could tell us what this is about, because I don't remember the details on this one. Okay, so Jim, we'll go through it next week then. Okay. I did also want to announce that we inducted Evan. We inducted 40-some Western Reserve Academy students into the Interact Club at Western Reserve Academy. This was an effort, I think, largely by Evan, to some extent also by Jim Ahern as well. Jim is one of the chapter advisors there, club advisors. This is a separate club for high school students. They're running their own program there. They're running their own service projects, their own meetings and things like that, but they are attached to us. We had an induction ceremony to the entire student body and faculty last Wednesday to recognize this and to tell everybody what this was, and it was great. And we will have some pictures, I think, eventually to show of this new class, this newly minted class. We're very excited to have them. And I'd like to figure out a way where we can get maybe some of them to come and introduce themselves to us at a future meeting or several meetings. Okay, Santa on the Green, the head elf, Ed Sogan, is looking for a couple of lieutenant elves. Okay, I'm talking about people who will be, two people in particular, somebody who would be there for a few hours in the morning or the early shift and then a few hours for the later shift to kind of like oversee things. Ed's got this thing down to a science, and the Olympic soup, I don't think you have the Olympic soup. No, Jimmy took that with him. Yeah, no, I'm afraid we don't have that. But we have some really awesome hot cocoa. So see Ed or me about that if you are interested in doing that. If I don't get enough interest, we're going to, we'll find some people. We'll twist some arms. December 7th, the date which will live in infamy, is when we're doing Santa on the Green this year. All right. We have a board meeting today. After this meeting, all are involved. This is a club board meeting. It should be in the Greenwood dining room, which I'll check to make sure that is where we're going to have it as soon as I'm done here. And we bumped the service learning class this week. I believe they'll be with us next week. So I think those are all the items. With nothing else, let's get on with the program. May I ask George Snyder to come on up and introduce our panel today?
Good morning, Rotarians. Let me also extend my welcomes to Tom's, to all of the guests we have here this morning, and also to all of those of you who are watching on Hudson Community Television. For all 5 Wednesdays during October, we are hearing from candidates running for local for local election, beginning with the city council races for all 4 wards, and then concluding on the final Wednesday with the race for mayor. Each of these races is contested, and in several the incumbent has chosen not to run again. Thus, no matter what the outcome, the face of local government will change, and perhaps its direction as well. Our format for this morning and for all the other meetings we're having this month will be 5-minute presentations from each of the candidates here at the podium, followed by an open question and answer session with the candidates seated, and all of you are invited to ask your questions. They will have 90 seconds each to respond. Fellow Rotarian, songmaster Chris Barker will act as our timekeeper. She will give warnings when 60 and 30 seconds are up, and also when the time is completed. I will act as moderator, and I request audience members to be respectful to all candidates. This morning we will hear in alphabetical order from City Council candidates for Ward 3, Brett Shriver and Skylar Sutton. They will be followed by Rebecca Leiter, a candidate for Ward 1, who was unable to appear 2 weeks ago. Our first speaker, Brett Shriver, has been a Hudson resident since 1977 when he was 2. He attended Hudson schools from kindergarten through high school graduation in 1993. He received scholarships from Hudson Rotary and 3 other local civic organizations, helping him to attend the University of Akron, where he earned a degree in mechanical engineering. He later earned an MBA from Ashland University. Following college graduation, Brett married his high school sweetheart, Lisa. They have 2 children, the oldest currently attending Miami University, and the youngest a freshman at Hudson High School. Brett is vice president of sales at a LED lighting company in Brecksville, and is a member of the Hudson Park Board and the Hudson High School Alumni Executive Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Brett Shriver.
Try to keep to my time limit. Hello, my name is Brett Shriver. Thank you, George, for the introduction, and thank you, Rotarians. I'm actually a little bit nervous, which is unusual for me because I do this a lot at work, but normally I'm not speaking about myself. So I wanted to start by thanking the Rotary Club. As was mentioned, I became part of the community when my parents moved me here at 2 years of age. I didn't have a choice at that point in time, and this is where I ended up. I did have a choice 14 years ago when I chose to move back here with my family. So my parents didn't have the means to provide a college education for me. So when I was in high school, I worked at Needs Garden Center, a local garden center, as well as Country Counter, to try to raise money for college. Luckily, being a member of the Hudson community, my senior year I was eligible for scholarships. If it hadn't have been for scholarships provided by the Hudson Rotary, the Hudson Kiwanis, the Hudson's Women's Club, and the Hudson JCs, most likely I would not have been able to go to college. So from that time forward, it's instilled in me a want to give back to the community. So thanks in part to organizations such as this and other volunteer organizations in Hudson, I was able to graduate from college, get my bachelor's degree in engineering, and I'm indebted to the community for that. So one of the questions that was asked is why we're running for city council, and in all honesty, that's what instilled in me. So the goal was to repay the community for assisting me so much during my childhood. And so that was kind of the thing that was hard to stand up here and say. But 4 years ago, I decided to run for a seat on city council. At that time, much like the candidates you hear now, I was concerned about the direction of the community. I stood here before you and stood before the voters at that time discussing Velocity Broadband and the youth development property, and at that point in time, the purchase of a new golf course. So these aren't new issues. These aren't things that have just happened and have been hidden from the public. You know, 4 years ago, I can tell you I stood up here, and this was a concern of mine and the reason that I ran 4 years ago. I lost an election by, I think, 80 votes total. It was fairly close. This year is great for me. I sat up here as one of, I think I might have been the only contested ward at the time. and I was running against an incumbent. So it's nice to see now other people getting involved. So at that point in time, I decided that, that didn't end what I wanted to do for Hudson. I went out and I saw an advertisement looking for alumni to help bring together the alumni of the high school. And I submitted an application and was selected to be part of that alumni committee. And I've served on it ever since. Beyond that, the parks are a huge thing for me. I love our park system. I was an avid runner and explored them. So at that point in time, I submitted an application for the park board twice, actually 3 times in my lifetime I've submitted. The third time, I finally got on, and I've been serving on the park board for 2 years now. I think I'm an active member of that group. I've been selected to be part of a smaller subcommittee that's writing the next park plan, the master plan that'll decide how we go forward for the next 20 years. And a lot of that's involving community input. So, when I try to separate myself from other candidates right now, it seems all of us are in agreement on YDC. We want to do something with the property, on phase 2, on velocity. So it's hard to differentiate between candidates, even for myself. So it seems a lot of people are using the same sound bites, the same issues as I did 4 years ago. So where I'm going right now is, the need for change is going to happen. There's not a single person running right now that was running 4 years ago. So when somebody says, I'm for change, it's going to happen. So what my platform right now is communication. On the park board, I found out communication needs to be fixed between council, staff, and residents. We need to listen and hear. And so I've experienced this. Beyond communications, city water for Ward 3. I asked for that 4 years ago, and nothing has been done in 4 years on that. The infrastructure needs improvement, sidewalks, and the connectivity plan that I've worked on my time on Park Board. So finally, I'd just like to promise that I'll work together with council. I've met with council, with staff. I want to work together, not against, and I think I can be a voice that can bring people together for the common good. So thank you guys for your time, and thank you.
All right, our next speaker, Skylar Sutton, has been a Hudson resident since 1988. He graduated from Hudson High School in 2001 and went on to earn a bachelor's degree in business administration and a master's degree in information systems and artificial intelligence. Skylar is currently employed as a senior software engineer at a medical software firm in Hudson, and previously has worked in various technology, analytical, and project management positions for Fortune 500 companies such as FedEx, Diebold, and Snap-on Incorporated. He is a member of the East Central Ohio region of American Mensa, the German Family Society of Akron, and the Summit County Beekeepers Association. So we have our second beekeeper here in 3 weeks. He and his wife have 2 children. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Skylar Sutton.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to speak to you. I'm a little camera shy, so I apologize if I'm looking at my notes more than you guys, so I'll try my best here. As mentioned, my name is Skylar Sutton. I'm a lifelong resident of Hudson, and I'm currently running for the Ward 3 council seat. My family left Detroit in the mid-'80s. We purchased a home in the northeast corner of the old township. In fact, my parents still live in that house today. My father was one of the first employees at a Hudson-based company. I used to play t-ball and catch frogs in a park where my daughter's elementary school now stands. My Boy Scout meetings were held in the basement of the First Congregational Church. And I never would have guessed that 20 years later, my daughter would eat her preschool lunches in that very same room. I used to play on an old stone foundation in the woods behind our house, and I later learned it was actually the ruins of one of the Ellsworth homes. I'm a proud alumni of the Hudson City Schools and a member of the 13-year club. My wife and I met at Geauga Lake, where we worked together for many years, and she says she knew she wanted to live in Hudson the very first time she visited our town. We chose to return to Hudson and raise our family for the very same reasons that you chose Hudson: the schools, the quality of life, and the charm. I've spent my career in project management, business analysis, and engineering with Fortune 500 companies like FedEx, Diebold, and Snap-on. I've led multi-million-dollar projects to the finish line, and I'm not afraid to ask the difficult questions about scope or cost-benefit analysis. I have a bachelor's in management from the University of Akron, a master's in information technology and artificial intelligence from the University of Michigan, and yes, I am a Wolverine, and I'm sorry if that offends you. I'm a proud member of American Mensa and the German Family Society. My mother is a first-generation German American. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to return to a highly technical role with a company right here in Hudson. You may know them as LexiComp. We go by Walters Kluwer these days. My wife is an educator at the Hudson City Schools. We live here, we work here, we love this town. This summer, I walked every single street in Ward 3, and I spoke to hundreds, possibly even thousands of you. I have a notebook full of comments, but there's 3 common themes that just keep jumping out from everyone I speak to: spending, infrastructure, and density. We're spending too much, but more importantly, we're spending on the wrong things. We're ignoring the infrastructure needs, especially in the old township. And we're getting too dense, which leads to the traffic problems and poor road conditions so many people complain about. Ward 3 has hundreds of homes that don't have access to fire hydrants, and entire neighborhoods that are isolated from downtown by busy streets with no sidewalks. Meanwhile, the village core gets more trails and high-speed internet. Our spending priorities are wrong, and council has failed their fiduciary duty. Whether you agree or disagree about the new city hall, scope creep and improper analysis caused us to double the renovation budget, and that should raise eyebrows. Did you know it'll take us almost 40 years to break even on that project? I know because I ran the numbers. Whether you agree or disagree on Velocity Broadband, it's hard to justify the opportunity costs of $4 million of high-speed internet lines instead of $4 million of fire hydrants and sidewalks. I want to bring accountability, analysis, and project management to council. I want us to focus spending on infrastructure like roads, sidewalks, water, and sewer, and I want better controls on growth. I want my children's generation to love this town as much as my generation did. Thank you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Skylar. Our last speaker, who was here for Ward 1, she was unable to be with us 2 weeks ago, is Rebecca Benson-Leiter. And Rebecca moved to Hudson as an infant when her father joined B.F. Goodrich. Her mother co-founded a master's program in urban planning and economic development at Cleveland State University and is a lifetime trustee of the Cleveland Restoration Society. Rebecca earned an undergraduate degree in economics from Kent State University and an MBA from Cleveland State. She has been employed at First Energy for nearly 20 years and has performed a variety of assignments from evaluating purchase power agreements to managing a Department of Energy managing a Department of Energy grants for smart technology. In her current role in Rates and Regulatory Affairs, she interacts with the state of Ohio on energy policies and utility rates. Rebecca lives in the Historic District with her husband Phil, who has been a member of Clock Tower Rotary for 22 years. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Rebecca Leiter.
Good morning, and I'm very happy to be here. I don't know if you know, but there was a mix-up with my email, which is why I didn't make it the first time. The email was going to leiterrebecca@gmail.com, and I'm Ymail, so unfortunately we didn't connect till just maybe 5 or 6 days before the event, and I'm glad that Tom reached out to me. So I'm very happy to be here. Also, I think what makes people nervous is like talking before 8 o'clock in the morning. Because, yeah, I definitely need a few more cups of coffee. Like George said, I grew up in Hudson. My parents came here in 1963, and I was 6 months old. And my dad came to the B.F. Goodrich Company, and other folks that he worked with recommended highly that he locate in Hudson, so that's what we did. I currently live on Aurora Street in the historic district, but I lived on Atterbury Boulevard, Hudson Drive, in the East Case neighborhood, and my parents currently reside on South Main. And I think the two neighborhoods that I most remember are the East Case and South Main Street neighborhoods. So I moved away for a little bit when I went to college, but then my husband and I came back. Like George said, I've been at First Energy for almost 20 years. I've worked in a variety of capacities: financial analysis, risk management. Like he said, I in my current role, I'm an expert in smart technologies. I ran a DOE grant, and I also know a lot about a public utility, which I think HPP is quite a large part of the city's budget. And I've worked with alternative technologies. I have some thoughts about how rates can be restructured so that we encourage alternative energy sources. Why am I running for council? Well, one of the earliest memories I have is going to Safety Town, and at the time it was behind the old Oviatt School, and it was set up like a tiny village. It had a clock tower, it had Elm Street, it had College Street, in Oviatt, and I remember thinking then, what a cute little town I lived in. Yeah, I really will. And I love driving. I remember thinking I'll never have my driver's license. But anyway, and I also remember like being in the Case neighborhood and walking down to Acme and getting a yogurt, which my mom thought was a snack, healthy eating. But I think that what I really want to do is preserve that small town charm experience. I know that we've grown a lot, but I think that we still have that, small town character, and that's what I'd really like to be able to preserve. I'd like to keep the town walkable, and I'd like to have a vibrant Main Street. So some of the things that I worry about too, like Skylar said, are some of the developments that are too dense and don't have enough green space. And many of you may know that I was part of I led the drive to get the vote on Phase 2, and that's really why. Not because I don't want to see development, but because I feel like it's too dense for the area, and I want us to keep our small town feel. And I feel like there has been a history of people that have tried to protect the town. You read about, if you go back in the newspapers, you see stories about where they tried to put parking where the green is right now, or take part of the green and make parking out of it, or try to knock down Brewster Mansion to put a drive-through bank in, And so people have resisted that type of thing, and I think that's a great thing and would like to see that continue. And yeah, with Phase 2, I really just feel like it should integrate more with the historic core. I think, my mom, being a planner and into historic preservation, has taught me a lot. And I've been to so many events where I've really kind of learned, okay, I guess I'm at my limit. So okay. I could go on and on.
We'll ask all three of the candidates to come up to the front here. James, we could have a mic also. That would be terrific. No, just pick a seat, please. The way this has happened in the way this has worked in the last several weeks, it's been just to take turns in answering the questions. I mean, all three can answer the question, but just don't be the first one every time or the last one every time. I'm going to begin with a question to all three of you that I've asked at the prior two meetings. I'm going to be asking it again next week and the week after. And that involves Hudson City government. Our town for many, many, many years has had a city manager form of government with a nonpartisan city council, neither Republican nor Democrat. And what I would like to know is from each of you is, are you for that form of government, or would you like to change it?
Yeah, I have no issues with a council manager form of government. I see no reason to change it. I think a city manager is much better educated and has more experience in running the intricacies of a city. I think it's an interesting question, though, because council can't actually make those kinds of changes. That's a charter change, and it has to come from the voters in the community. So while it's important to know what council thinks about that position, I don't necessarily worry about it because none of us individually could make those changes. What I have heard out talking to a lot of you is there's disapproval and frustration with the city manager and council's ability to execute their checks and balances. So while I don't think we need to change anything in the structure, I think we need to change perhaps the working relationship and some of the oversights.
My answer, I think, will be fairly short. I agree with Skylar and with most of the other candidates that I've seen. I think our current form of government is perfect for the city of Hudson. I wouldn't make any changes at all. I would just work to improve communications. But as far as the way the government works, the weak mayor, strong council, and the city manager, I'm in favor of keeping it the way it is.
I think I'd agree with both of you. I think, you know, either a strong mayor or a city manager each has different problems, and so I think either one can work. I do agree that I think that the current the way things are working out right now, that people feel frustrated and not listened to, and so I do think that, you know, the city manager has a vision, but I think there needs to be a group of people that are strongly representing the views of the public. So as far as nonpartisan, I agree that it should stay nonpartisan. Most local issues are like roads and phase 2 and have nothing to do with national issues. And people need to work together.
Thank you. Questions from the floor? Don't be bashful. We have a large room here.
Actually, I'll follow up on the nonpartisan. I'm not sure if the other two candidates talked about whether or not you want to keep it nonpartisan. And before I ask the question, just make a statement. So 2 of us are running for school board, and we each got an email asking whether we were Democratic or Republican because the person writing wanted to know how to do their voter list. No questions about education, funding, or anything else to do with the school system. So personally, I would agree, but I want to hear your thoughts on it, that we should keep it nonpartisan. But just want to know, are you for keeping it nonpartisan, against it, or undecided?
You already, okay. I'd start off by saying that the partisan portion of the election is very disheartening for me. I'm an independent. I don't vote in even primaries. I vote issues only, and that's just who I am. So bringing partisan into it, you know, I'm directly opposed to that. But I was actually prepared for that because I heard that before. So I got a letter yesterday from the Republican Party. It was arrived at my house just on time yesterday. Current household resident. So close relationship. So yeah, I'm against the partisan involvement in our community. I don't think it'll be good for the city of Hudson, and so that's my.
Yeah, complete agreement. I'm also an independent. I don't belong to any national party. None of them speak to me. And I completely agree that we need to keep it nonpartisan. And the issues here in town are local issues, and they're not really of interest at the national level, and I don't think we really need anybody meddling in that.
Questions?
Hi, good morning. I live in Ward 3, so this would be for Brett or Mr. Sutton. What, did you support the skate park expansion, and why?
I'll start. Yeah, I did not support the skate park decision. I was disappointed in the park board and council for spending as much as they did on the skate park. That's not because I don't want skaters in town. I used to skate when I was younger. I just think it was far more money than we needed to spend on that project, and I think there were cheaper alternatives, and I think there were better things we could have done with that funding.
I think I'm on record as supporting it. I'm a member of the park board. That project was started before I even became a member of park board. So the way that the city government works is it has to be put into the budget and forwarded. So my first day on park board, they had already slated to renovate the skate park. That in mind, I did the due diligence. I spent countless days over at the skate park interviewing people that were there, asking them, some of the parents were questioning why I was there, but asking them if they were residents of Hudson, not to try to kick them out. What I learned was that currently everybody who uses that park is either a resident or a friend of a resident. Nobody's coming from out of town to be there. But yes, I supported it. I was part of the group that voted from park board. There was only one person that wasn't in favor of it after reviewing it. So we voted to carry it over to city council, and city council, I think, voted the same way, 6-1 to pass it. So the money's available. It's voted on by the residents to be slated for parks, and we're trying to do the best that we can with it. Currently, we're working on redoing baseball fields and soccer fields, and I'm highly involved in trying to get a natural meadow there as well. So I guess I'm expanding too far, but yes, I'm in favor of it.
And my answer will be rather short on this one because I really don't really have a strong feeling one way or another about the skate park.
Rich Warfield?
Thank you for all three of you for coming today and for the future efforts you're going to put in if you get elected. And I'd like to thank the city council members that are here, taking a nap, some of them over to my left, and all their efforts and what they've done for the last X amount of years. One of the oh, I'm sorry. Did I wake you up?
You woke him up.
So anyway, oh boy, the way it's on TV. Anyway, one of the comments was brought up about the internet and the amount of money that was dumped into the city-owned internet versus, streets and all that. I guess, I don't know if I need to make a statement or I need to phrase it like a question.
A question would be preferred.
I realize that. I just need to know more about their positions on the internet and also on the roads. We all know that our roads are an issue going forward. I can honestly tell you this, being a business owner for the last 8-9 years in Hudson, if it wasn't for the city of Hudson stepping in on the internet, not knowing the total costs, I probably would have moved out. It was that bad. So I just want to make that statement. I think it was something that really needed to be addressed at that time. So maybe you can share your views on that.
Yeah. My view of this sort of thing is really shaped by working in a public utility, and I can say at the state level, the state strongly discourages a public utility from engaging in competitive businesses, especially if a robust market already exists. So I think that would be my view of cable, of the high-speed cable, is that, since a robust market already exists, I don't feel that the city should be stepping in and competing with private businesses.
Thank you. So 4 years ago, I ran on a platform because I was upset about velocity. It wasn't about the system overall. My views have changed somewhat. So, and I'll start with that. So my issue was that at that point in time, there was a quotation from our city manager in the local newspaper that said, all residents of Hudson will have velocity soon. And I questioned what soon meant and when it was going to happen. So the number two issue is I questioned if it was going to be haves and have-nots, if half the city was going to get it and the other half wasn't. Fast forward to today, and I can tell you exactly my concerns have occurred. The businesses have Velocity Internet. If that's something that's bringing businesses in here and supports that business, then at this point in time, that's a cost that's already been incurred, and I support it. To then extend that to residents and to have some residents being able to get low-cost, high-speed internet that is supported by taxpayers and all taxpayers, whereas other residents, i.e. Ward 3, have no access at all. And I strongly disagree with taking money from all residents or from the community and spending it just to provide services to a few.
Thanks. As I mentioned before, I'm disappointed with Velocity, but I'd like to clarify, it's not that I'm disappointed with the concept of high-speed internet. I'm in a technical profession. In fact, it's good for me, the more people that have high-speed internet, because that actually makes more demand for my industry. The issue I have with it is the opportunity cost. We've spent a lot of money on it, and that's a lot of money that could have been spent on other needs that residents have here in town. Particularly Ward 3, we'll probably never see Velocity in Ward 3 because we have a lot of non-city owned utility poles, which means they can't hang Velocity cables on those poles. It's a very real fear of a lot of Ward 3 residents that we're paying for Velocity and we'll never get it. I'm glad to hear that it helped out your business. I can tell you that we have our operation here in Hudson, and we're already served by 2 high-speed fiber lines. Velocity came through, and we did purchase from them, but there are tertiary fiber lines. So only if the first 2 get cut would we even fall over to Velocity. So I don't necessarily know that the need was there. The companies are servicing Hudson with high-speed fiber already.
Yes, sir. Zoom.
So my question has to do with roads and infrastructure, okay?
Is that on?
Roads and infrastructure. I live in Old Town Colony, and in the last year, half of Colony Road was paved. Our section on Clarehaven, half of that was paved, and all of Keswick was paved. And so I called the city and I said, why wasn't the rest of Clarehaven and Colony paved? And they basically said there's not enough money during this term to do that. We'll get to you. I have heard from the mayor that there's a possibility, if we think about it, of taking a bond out and doing the job and getting it done while interest rates are low at about 2%. What do you think about that?
That's fine. The first issue that I have with the roads, we're in this situation because they weren't properly addressed when they needed to be addressed. The money was spent elsewhere. So absent putting us into a bad situation by not properly addressing it at the time, now we're in a situation where we do have to fix the roads and spend for infrastructure. Whether that's a bond, I agree interest rates are low. Maybe that's how we get started immediately. But it's a sad state of affairs when the city has made the decision not to support the infrastructure and put the next council or the next generation in a position where we have to take out a loan in order to properly maintain the streets. Now, 2% is a low interest rate. The problem is going forward, every year you're paying off that, you're not paying for more infrastructure. So it continues to put you in a hole.
I think I'd agree with Brett that I think that roads are really one of the basic services that the city should be providing, and therefore it should be out of the regular budget, not, you shouldn't have to borrow money to do it. I have, that, your point is not new to me because I have canvassed down there and heard plenty of people complain about the roads down there. But I do think that we maybe spent money on some things that we should not have and been fixing the roads instead.
I could talk about the roads for hours, so I'll try to limit myself to 90 seconds here. I completely echo your concern. I live on Ravenna Street, and they paved my portion of Ravenna Street this year, but they didn't pave the worst portion of Ravenna Street, which is down by the post office. It really boggled my mind as to why my section was paved and that section was ignored. You know, if we really truly were focusing on the roads, we would have made that decision to shift that funding from my side of Ravenna to the other side of Ravenna and fix the worst part. I think it's important that we fix those roads, and so if we have to take a bond to do it, then that's what we're going to have to do to fix those roads. I think it's disappointing that we're even considering a bond when you consider $6.5 million on Town Hall, $4 million on Velocity. That's $10 million. I mean, that money came out of the general fund. It could have been spent on the roads without a bond. So.
Okay, we have time for about 2 more questions.
Many of you guys mentioned phase 2. I was wondering if each of you could share your position on growth in Hudson, particularly in regards to the density and the timing.
Excuse me. Yeah, good question. Phase 2, I'll go on record, I was against it, mostly from a density perspective. I thought they were packing in too much into too tight of an area, building structures that were just too large for the surrounding area. They didn't blend well into the historic village down there. Abstracting that larger, I think we have a density problem in Hudson. It seems like every developer that comes here tries to get an exception or, you know, add 30 houses beyond what our code says they're allowed to do. One of the things I'd like to pursue, and it would have to be, again, pursued by the voters because this would be a charter change, but other towns have done it and it's worked really well. You put in a line that basically says any council action that would increase the density of a property would have to go to the voters. It would have to be approved by the voters. And I think that's a really powerful way to put a lot of control back into the residents' hands and really not stop the growth, but slow the growth and keep it at a controlled rate. The residents would have a lot more input on that process.
Starting with phase 2, I was an early signer on the paperwork that was started to put it on the ballot. At that point in time, I thought it was more about give the people the opportunity to vote, and I can make my decision later. When the vote came up, I was against phase 2 as it stood, specifically the residential. And it falls in line with my thought process with Velocity. I don't think the city should be building homes and selling them to individuals. I think there's businesses that do that, there's companies that do that. As far as the commercial aspect of that, I'm in favor of creating Class A office space so that we can bring in some more revenue. And at this point, it seems the residential is going to be done before any of us get on council or voted on, and that's still up in the air. And then the second phase of it would be what I actually support, which is the Class A commercial. So that's the portion there. As far as the density goes, I'm in agreement with Skylar. It was questionable to me when builders come in and try to change what they're allowed to build. Cities put that in place a long time ago with how much real estate is necessary, how many homes can be built per acre of lot, and I abided by that when I built my home 12 years ago. It's on more than an acre of land, so.
I think I've already articulated my position about phase 2, but I think, something that I would add to what these guys have already said is that I'm concerned not just about the density, but I am concerned about the traffic, and I'm concerned about the walkability of the town. I myself try to cross 91, and it can be difficult. People don't necessarily pay attention to those traffic signals. So I want to keep it walkable, and I think that's important for our Main Street businesses to be strong, is that people are able to walk to them. I also want to just say one thing about smart traffic lighting. We've all had the experience of coming up to a traffic light at night and you're the only one there and you have to sit through the red light. And that's where smart traffic lighting really helps is when, there's no one there and it allows people to keep going. When there's heavy traffic, I'm highly skeptical about whether smart traffic lighting is really going to help in that situation, since there's all the intersections are full. So I'd like to see it piloted.
Any other questions?
One last question. So on the school board, we have issues, have disagreements. When an issue comes up, ask questions, research it, then take a vote. And generally, whether we were for or against that vote, try and support it going forward. Maybe we'll win the next vote. My question to you, each of you on city council, would that be your philosophy? Or if the vote does not go your way, would you continue to advocate that you were opposed to the results of the vote?
I guess my answer to that would be it depends. I mean, a lot of things, if you work in a corporation, you learn to go along with things that you don't necessarily agree with. In some instances, you might continue to, bring up the pitfalls and not necessarily, leave the conversation. But obviously, if you're working with the body, you've got to be cooperative and have a spirit of working together. So I guess it would be a combination of, being supportive, but maybe if it's an important issue, to continue to talk about it.
This is actually something that I've talked about a lot recently. So I believe in negotiating up front. If an issue is brought before City Council, voice your opinion and work towards a goal that you would support. So that's first reading, second reading, third reading. There should never be a time where something comes to a vote and everybody in the room doesn't know how you're going to vote. It shouldn't be a surprise. It's not a time to voice displeasure and grandstand, or voice support and grandstand, either way. So the work is done ahead of time, negotiating, working, and trying to make it something that you can support. If at the end of the day you still can't support it and you disagree, cast your vote. If you're in the majority, then it fails. If you're in the minority, then it passes. But after that, I would support moving ahead, moving on to future, and making it the best that you can. I don't see a point in continuing to fall back on previous disagreements. I think it breeds discontent. And me in business and personal life, I like people to get along. I'm uncomfortable in situations where there's underlying anger or something like that, so I'm always trying to fix that. So.
At the end of the day, democracy is run on a majority-minority vote, and if the majority wants to go in a direction that a minority doesn't, it's the minority's responsibility to go along and make it as successful as it can be at the end of the day, whether they agreed or disagreed. I don't think voicing your displeasure at council meetings would be an appropriate action, but you're still an elected position, and at town halls, if your residents aren't happy with a position, they do have a right to know where you stood on something. So I don't think we should be silencing any opposition voices or objections. But like Brett mentioned, I don't think it's appropriate to grandstand.
I would like to thank Rebecca Leiter, Brett Shriver, Skylar Sutton for joining us today. I'd also like to thank our timekeeper, Chris Barker, for your help. Thank you all for coming, and I'll give it back to Tom Tobin.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, candidates. This was very enlightening today. By the way, when Brett mentioned the weak mayor, I happened to look over at our mayor to see, how he did not even flinch. He didn't wince or anything. I think he might have flexed a little bit. So, yeah. But be that as well. Let me just also mention it's very, and I didn't know much. All of your background coming in today, but the thing that I picked up on in particular, and this is no endorsement across the board or anything, but it really does my heart good to see folks like myself who grew up in this town from a very young age, moved away for college and maybe for a career, came back to this community, have your families here, and express such a love of the community that you're willing to put yourself and dedicate yourself to making this town better. So thank you so much for that. That really is wonderful. I'm going to repeat a quote that I mentioned before because it's still appropriate from FDR. Democracy cannot succeed unless those who express their choice are prepared to choose wisely. The real safeguard of democracy, therefore, is education, and that's what we're exercising today. Okay? I want to remind everybody we have a board meeting in the Greenwood private dining room after this meeting. So everyone's invited to that. All Rotarians are. And once again, thank you for our guests for being here today. Wrote a buck. Thank you. They always have to save me here. Today's payout is $16. All right, and I'm going to ask Rebecca to pick a ticket. And the last four numbers are 2179. 2179. All right. Lynn, way to go. All right. Lynn, let me give you $16. Have a nice lunch on that. And let's see if you're going to go for the big money here. You see there is a black marble in there. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Maybe next week, play again. And I think that's all we have for today. So if that's the case, I declare this meeting adjourned.